Welcome, my name is Belén Cáceres-Ramírez and I will be presenting my action research proposal, Learning to Listen Through Collaborative Dictogloss Tasks, Note-Taking and Transcript Use. I divided this presentation into 3 sections. Firstly, I will talk about the context and problem identification. Secondly, I will delve into the main constructs my proposal is based upon. And finally, I will present my action plan proposal with sample materials and a sample assessment. Let's start with the contextualization and problem identification. My research proposal stemmed from the identification of a gap in listening comprehension observed in an 11th grade class from a co-ed public school where I did my professional practicum last year. This observation is concordant with an empirical study carried out by the Ministry of Education that assessed 11th graders' level of English proficiency across Chile. According to the report by the Ministry of Education, students from 11th grade obtained 29 points average out of 100 in listening comprehension. What's more, there was a clear gap between students from low socioeconomic backgrounds who achieved 21 points average, whereas students from high socioeconomic backgrounds achieved 41 points average. In fact, 87% of the students from the school where I did my professional practicum came from low socioeconomic backgrounds. Having considered the importance of addressing this problem, I designed an action plan proposal based on the 11th grade class, which was composed of 24 students, 13 males and 11 females, whose level of proficiency was categorized as A2 to B1. From these 24 students, between 9 to 12 participated in the weekly online synchronous sessions. These online sessions were structured around a final class question to be answered individually by the students. For the problem identification, I focused on the number of answers to this final question when the lesson had been focused on listening comprehension. Interestingly, there was a low number of responses, even when students had successfully completed all of the listening activities during collaborative instances, a modality that they enjoy and are used to. Here in the chart, you can see a sample of the number of students present in the synchronous lessons, and these are the numbers of answers to the class question. As you can see, classes number 6 and 7 were focused on listening comprehension, while classes 8 and 9 on another skill. This evidence shows that students' level of achievement is low when doing listening comprehension activities. Therefore, in order to increase students' level of achievement, the intervention's aim is twofold. That students develop note-taking skills while listening, and that they learn how to use the transcripts as a help option. This will be accomplished with the support of students' peers and will be framed in the construct of collaborative listening through the completion of a dictogloss task. Therefore, the research question that guides this proposal is, to what extent can collaborative dictogloss tasks, transcript use, and note-taking increase the listening comprehension of students? Let's consider this in more detail throughout the literature review. Firstly, collaborative listening is understood as the verbal interaction between pairs or small groups of language learners for the purpose of facilitating and supporting one another's comprehension of L2 listening text and L2 listening development. Furthermore, as stated by Cohen and Lotan, learning significantly improves when students are actively engaged in the activities that require small groups or peer interaction. This mutual assistance is explored during the whole process of listening in my action research proposal, since the final task is performed in groups. The following construct is the dictogloss task, which is an integrated skill task-based activity whose main objective is to collaboratively reconstruct an oral text is using students' own linguistic and grammatical resources. Using dictogloss tasks has proven to be successful in helping L2 listeners improve their listening comprehension. Brown points out that the technique is student-centered, with a focus on meaning rather than form. Since students must reach a consensus, communication is realistic and purposeful. In this proposal, the dictogloss task is the main activity. To this end, I adapted the dictogloss task sequence by one row. For instance, I added the compulsory use of transcripts and I included a note-taking pedagogic cycle. Additionally, the listening input will be authentic since it helps produce better language and makes learners more confident to deal with real-life situations, among other benefits. So, my adaptation of the dictogloss task consists of 6 steps, which I will explain later on in my action plan. Now I will describe the note-taking pedagogic cycle. The task of taking notes involves that students should almost simultaneously be listening, understanding, deciding how and what to record, and finally writing while continuing to listen out for the next piece of important information. Intentionally, in my intervention, students will use just pen and paper to take notes since not all of them have access to good equipment. For this, I will follow the note-taking pedagogic cycle devised by Siegel, as it is presented in Figure 1. Stage number 1 focuses on segmenting the information into information units. The second stage consists of dividing the information according to its relevance. The third stage expects learners to start recording verbatim information, while the last stage focuses on verbatim and simplified note-taking. My decision to include Siegel's note-taking pedagogic cycle is twofold. First, to train students to take proper notes to successfully complete the dictogloss task. Second, to increase students' listening comprehension by teaching them how to listen for general and specific information. Let's move on to the last construct, the transcripts. Transcripts refer to the written representation of oral texts. They have proven to be helpful in language learning, task completion, and text comprehension. In this sense, students will use transcripts to compensate for comprehension breakdowns hindered by language problem, technical issues, or even lack of confidence. That's all I have to say about the literature review. Now we should move on to the action plan itself. This intervention consists of 8 macro sessions that should be implemented within at least 10 lessons of 90 minutes each. They follow the 4th thematic unit of the national curriculum, volunteer work and entrepreneurs from 11th grade. In order to ensure that the process is scaffolded, each lesson has conceptual, procedural, and attitudinal objectives, which range from low cognitively demanding tasks to high cognitively demanding ones. The objective is that by the end of the intervention, students will be able to take notes and use transcripts effectively in collaborative dictogloss tasks related to volunteering and entrepreneurship. For this, each session will focus on the development of individual steps from the dictogloss and note-taking cycle. For example, the orange text represents the steps of the dictogloss and the green text represents the note-taking pedagogic cycle. The sample material I will show you belongs to the second lesson, which is called Volunteering Projects. For the pre-listening, students are expected to activate topic-related vocabulary by matching the words with its definition. In the while listening section, students are expected to listen to the audio one time and to answer 2 general comprehension questions, which is something they learned how to do in the previous lesson as it was the first step of the dictogloss task. In this part of the worksheet, students will find a box to help them remember what they have to look for when identifying the main idea. Before moving on to the main part of the while listening section, students will confirm their ideas with a classmate. In the second part of the while listening task, students are expected to carry out the first step of the note-taking pedagogic cycle, which is segmenting information into information units while listening, and the second step of the dictogloss task, which is listening for details. Students will be explained what an information unit is and will be given examples. To further support this new stage, the transcript will be divided into 3, and the 2 main parts will have support, while the last one is expected to be carried out on their own. After completing this section, students must compare their answers and discuss 2 questions. Lastly, they are expected to check for understanding by doing a matching exercise. Afterwards, they must go to Google Classroom and answer the class question. I'd like now to show the assessment plan to discuss the effectiveness of the intervention and its trustworthiness, whereby answering the research question. To what extent can collaborative dictogloss tasks and transcript use increase the listening comprehension of students? Hence, three main instruments will be used. Firstly, I will keep track of the number of answers to the class question on Google Classroom. The number of answers will be collected in sessions 1, 4, and 8 to compare students' progress. Secondly, I will observe students' process in the pedagogic note-taking cycle in sessions 2 to 5. More specifically, I will focus on the student's ability to record information that is pertinent to answer the class question. Finally, I will use the first and final draft of the dictogloss task to assess the effectiveness of the pedagogic note-taking cycle, the transcript use, and the collaborative component of the intervention, since the dictogloss task involves the deployment of strategies and abilities developed in the previous lessons. Thank you for listening. For any question or comment, please contact me at my email.